Picture this. You wake up Monday morning, and before your feet even hit the floor, your mind is already racing. Work deadlines, relationship problems, financial stress, that conversation you need to have but keep avoiding. Your heart starts pounding, your chest feels tight, and you haven't even gotten out of bed yet. Sound familiar? Here's the thing most people don't realize. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're just human, living in a world that seems designed to steal your peace and drain your positivity. But what if I told you that buried deep within you is a switch, a secret key that can transform that storm in your mind into a calm, serene oasis? This isn't just another feel-good video with surface-level advice. Today, we're diving deep into 15 life-changing strategies that will rewire your brain, reshape your habits, and give you unshakable inner peace. These aren't just theories, they're battle-tested tools that have helped millions of people reclaim control of their mental and emotional state. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete toolkit for staying calm in chaos and radiating positivity, even when life tries to knock you down. So, grab a notebook, find a comfortable spot, and let's begin this transformation together. Chapter 1. The Paradox of Control. Here's something that might blow your mind. The harder you try to control everything in your life, the more out of control you actually feel. I know it sounds backwards, but stick with me on this. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to be the director of a movie where we're only meant to be the main character. We exhaust ourselves trying to control our jobs, our relationships, other people's opinions, the weather, traffic, the economy, even our own thoughts and emotions. But here's the brutal truth. The more energy you pour into controlling the uncontrollable, the more stressed, anxious, and overwhelmed you become. Think about the last time you were stuck in traffic. You probably felt your blood pressure rising, gripped the steering wheel tighter, maybe even honked your horn or changed lanes frantically. But did any of that actually make the traffic move faster? Of course not. You just made yourself miserable while sitting in the exact same traffic jam. Now imagine a different scenario. You're in that same traffic, but instead of fighting it, you take a deep breath and think, this is completely outside my control. I can use this time to listen to that podcast I've been meaning to catch up on, or practice some breathing exercises, or just enjoy a few minutes of quiet reflection. Same traffic, completely different experience. This is the paradox of control in action. True calmness doesn't come from controlling every detail of your life. It comes from understanding the difference between what you can influence and what you cannot. Let me share a simple but powerful exercise that will change how you approach every stressful situation. It's called the circle of influence. Imagine you're standing in the center of two circles. The inner circle represents everything you have direct control over: your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, your decisions, how you treat others, what you eat, how you spend your time. The outer circle represents everything outside your control: other people's choices, the past, the future, natural disasters, the economy, other people's opinions of you. Here's what most people do wrong. They spend 90% of their mental energy worrying about things in the outer circle while neglecting the inner circle where they actually have power. They stress about whether their boss likes them instead of focusing on doing excellent work. They worry about what might happen next year instead of making good choices today. They try to change their partner's personality instead of working on their own communication skills. But here's what happens when you flip this script. When you pour your energy into the inner circle, into what you can actually control, something magical occurs. Your influence naturally expands. When you focus on being the best version of yourself, you positively impact everyone around you. When you control your reactions to difficult situations, you often influence how those situations unfold. When you stop trying to force outcomes and start focusing on your effort and attitude, better outcomes tend to follow. I learned this lesson the hard way during one of the most stressful periods of my life. I was working at a job where my boss was unpredictable. The company was going through major changes, and I felt like everything was falling apart. I spent months trying to predict what would happen next, attempting to influence decisions that weren't mine to make, and losing sleep over scenarios that might never occur. Then one day, I had a revelation. I drew those 2 circles on a piece of paper and honestly categorized everything I was worried about. I realized I was spending almost all my mental energy on things in the outer circle while completely neglecting the inner circle. So I made a decision. I would focus exclusively on what I could control, doing my job excellently, maintaining a positive attitude, building good relationships with colleagues, and preparing myself for whatever might come next. The result? Within 3 months, I was promoted. Not because I tried to control the outcome, but because I focused entirely on controlling my effort and attitude. The promotion wasn't even the best part. The best part was the peace I felt during those 3 months. Instead of living in constant anxiety about the future, I was present, focused, and genuinely calm. This principle applies to every area of life. In relationships, you can't control whether someone loves you back, but you can control how lovingly you treat them. In your career, you can't control whether you get promoted, but you can control the quality of work you produce. In your health, you can't control your genetics, but you can control your daily habits. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it's liberating. When you truly accept what's outside your control, you stop wasting energy fighting unwinnable battles. You stop lying awake at night replaying conversations you can't change or rehearsing scenarios that may never happen. You start sleeping better, thinking clearer, and feeling calmer. But here's the key. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up on your dreams. It's about channeling your energy where it can actually make a difference. It's about becoming strategically calm instead of randomly reactive. Chapter 2. The Gratitude Revolution. Now, I want to talk about gratitude, but not in the way you might expect. Most people think gratitude means making a list of good things in your life and calling it a day. That's nice, but it's not going to create the deep, lasting positivity we're after. Real gratitude, the kind that transforms your entire outlook on life, is about finding gold in the shadows. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman I know who lost her job during the recession. At first, she was devastated. She had worked at the same company for 12 years, and suddenly, she was unemployed with bills to pay and a family to support. For the first few weeks, she was angry, bitter, and terrified about the future. But then something shifted. Instead of just focusing on what she had lost, Sarah started asking a different question. What can I be grateful for in this situation? It sounds crazy, right? Being grateful for losing your job? But here's what she discovered. Being unemployed gave her the first real break she'd had in over a decade. She realized she had been working in a job that was slowly draining her soul, staying only because it felt safe and familiar. The forced break allowed her to reconnect with her family, rediscover interests she had abandoned, and honestly evaluate what she wanted from her career. 6 months later, Sarah launched her own consulting business doing work she was passionate about. 2 years after that, she was earning more than she ever had as an employee and working with clients she genuinely enjoyed. She told me, "Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me, but I never would have seen it that way if I hadn't learned to look for the hidden gifts in difficult situations." This is what I call revolutionary gratitude, the practice of finding value and meaning even in life's most challenging moments. It's not about pretending that bad things are good or ignoring real pain and difficulty. It's about training your brain to seek out the lessons, growth opportunities, and unexpected benefits that often accompany our struggles. Here's a simple but powerful way to start practicing this. Every evening, Instead of just listing 3 things you're grateful for, challenge yourself with these 3 questions. What's one difficulty I faced today? And what did it teach me? What's one thing that didn't go as planned? And how might it have protected me or redirected me towards something better? What's one person who frustrated or challenged me today? And how did they help me practice patience, empathy, or strength? For example, instead of writing, "I'm grateful for my health," you might write, "I'm grateful for the headache I had this morning because it reminded me to drink more water and take better care of myself." Instead of "I'm grateful for my family," you might write, "I'm grateful for the argument I had with my teenager because it showed me that they feel safe enough to express their real feelings with me, and it reminded me to listen more and lecture less." This shift in perspective is incredibly powerful because it trains your brain to look for opportunity and meaning in every situation. When you practice revolutionary gratitude consistently, you develop what I call benefit, finding vision, the ability to spot the silver lining even in the darkest clouds. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you start looking for lessons and benefits in difficult situations, you actually start experiencing fewer situations as truly difficult. That traffic jam becomes an opportunity for quiet reflection. That criticism from your boss becomes valuable feedback for improvement. That rejection becomes redirection towards something better suited for you. I remember working with a client named Mark who was going through a difficult divorce. He was bitter, angry, and convinced that his life was ruined. During one of our sessions, I challenged him to find 3 things he could be grateful for about his divorce. He looked at me like I was insane. But over the following weeks, something remarkable happened. Mark started to see that his divorce was forcing him to become more independent and self-reliant. He was learning to cook, manage finances, and take care of himself in ways he never had before. He was also reconnecting with friends he had neglected during his marriage and rediscovering interests and hobbies he had abandoned. Most importantly, he was learning valuable lessons about communication, compromise, and what he really wanted in a relationship. 6 months later, Mark told me, "I'm not glad my marriage ended, but I'm grateful for who I'm becoming because of it." This is the power of revolutionary gratitude. It doesn't change what happens to you, but it completely transforms how you experience what happens to you. It turns you from a victim of circumstances into a student of life, constantly learning and growing from every experience. But revolutionary gratitude goes even deeper than finding lessons in difficulties. It's also about appreciating the ordinary moments that we usually take for granted. It's being grateful for the fact that you woke up this morning, that your heart is beating without you having to think about it, that you have access to clean water, that you can see the sky, that you have the ability to learn and grow. When you start noticing and appreciating these basic gifts of existence, it creates a foundation of contentment that's not dependent on external circumstances. You realize that you're already incredibly wealthy in ways that have nothing to do with money, incredibly fortunate in ways that have nothing to do with status or achievement. Chapter 3. The Art of Emotional Resetting. Your emotions are like the weather. They change constantly. They're often unpredictable, and while you can't control them completely, you can definitely learn to navigate them skillfully. The problem is, most people treat their emotions like they're permanent states rather than temporary experiences. Think about it this way. When you're angry, you think, "I am angry," as if anger is your identity. When you're sad, you think, "I am sad," as if sadness defines who you are. But what if I told you that you're not your emotions? You're the observer of your emotions. What if anger, sadness, fear, and frustration are just weather patterns passing through the sky of your consciousness? This shift in perspective, from being your emotions to observing your emotions, is the foundation of emotional resetting. It's the difference between being caught in a storm and watching a storm from a safe, warm house. Let me share with you the most powerful emotional reset technique I've ever learned. I call it the STOP method, and it can change your emotional state in less than 60 seconds. S stands for stop. The moment you notice you're getting overwhelmed by a negative emotion, literally say, stop, out loud or in your mind. This breaks the momentum of the emotional spiral and creates a moment of pause. T stands for take a breath. Not just any breath, but a specific type of breathing that activates your parasympathetic nervous system. Breathe in slowly through your nose for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, then exhale through your mouth for 6 counts. The longer exhale is key because it triggers your body's relaxation response. O stands for observe. Look at your emotion with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of thinking, I shouldn't feel this way, or this is terrible, try thinking, isn't it interesting that I'm feeling angry right now? I wonder what triggered this. What is this emotion trying to tell me? P stands for proceed with intention. Now that you've created some space between yourself and the emotion, you can choose your response rather than just react automatically. Ask yourself, what would be the most helpful response in this situation? How do I want to show up right here? I learned this technique during one of the most challenging periods of my life when I was dealing with a family crisis. My default response to stress was to either shut down completely or explode in frustration, neither of which was helpful. But when I started using the STOP method consistently, I discovered I could remain calm and clear-headed even in extremely difficult situations. The key is practice. Don't wait until you're in the middle of an emotional hurricane to try this technique. Practice it when you're feeling mildly irritated or slightly anxious. The more you use it in low-stakes situations, the more available it becomes when you really need it. But emotional resetting isn't just about managing negative emotions. It's also about amplifying positive ones. Most people are much better at dwelling on what went wrong than savoring what went right. They'll replay an embarrassing moment for hours, but forget a compliment within minutes. Here's a simple but powerful practice. Whenever you experience a moment of joy, gratitude, love, or contentment, pause and really let yourself feel it. Take a mental photograph of the moment. Notice what's happening in your body. Maybe your shoulders relax, your breathing deepens, or you feel a warmth in your chest. Spend at least 20 seconds really absorbing the good feeling. This practice is like making deposits in your emotional bank account. The more positive moments you consciously savor and store, the more emotional resources you have to draw on during difficult times. Another crucial aspect of emotional resetting is understanding that emotions have a natural lifespan. Research shows that the physiological component of an emotion, the actual chemical response in your body, typically lasts only about 90 seconds. If you're feeling angry, sad, or anxious for longer than that, it's because you're feeding the emotion with your thoughts. This is incredibly empowering information. It means that no matter how intense an emotion feels in the moment, if you can just observe it without feeding it with dramatic thoughts or stories, it will naturally begin to subside within a couple of minutes. I experienced this firsthand during a particularly stressful work presentation. About halfway through, I realized I had made a significant error in my data. My first instinct was to panic, and I could feel the anxiety rising in my chest. But instead of spiraling into thoughts like, I'm going to get fired, or everyone thinks I'm incompetent, I simply acknowledged the feeling. I notice I'm feeling anxious right now. That's understandable given the situation. I took a few deep breaths, corrected the error, and continued with the presentation. The anxiety passed within a few minutes, and I was able to finish strong. Later, several colleagues commented on how well I had handled the mistake and how professional I had remained under pressure. This is the power of emotional resetting. It doesn't eliminate difficult emotions, but it prevents them from hijacking your entire day or derailing your performance. It gives you the ability to feel your feelings without being controlled by them. Chapter 4. Rewriting your inner story. The most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself in your own mind. This internal dialogue, your inner voice, is running constantly, providing commentary on everything that happens to you, shaping how you see yourself and interpret the world around you. The problem is, for most people, this inner voice is like having a harsh, critical roommate living in their head. It's the voice that says, "You're not smart enough. You'll never succeed. Everyone is judging you. You always mess things up." This voice is so familiar that most people don't even realize it's there, let alone that they have the power to change it. But here's something that might surprise you. That critical inner voice isn't actually you. It's a collection of old programming, things you heard from parents, teachers, peers, and society throughout your life. It's the voice of your fears, your insecurities, and your limiting beliefs. The real you, the conscious, aware, wise part of you, has the power to observe this voice and choose whether to listen to it or not. Let me share a story about David, a talented graphic designer who came to me because he was struggling with chronic anxiety and self-doubt. David had been freelancing for several years but was constantly worried that his clients would discover he was a fraud and that he didn't really know what he was doing. As we talked, it became clear that David's inner voice was incredibly harsh. When a client asked for revisions, his inner voice said, "See, you're terrible at this. They hate your work." When he landed a new project, his inner voice said, "You just got lucky. They'll figure out you're not as good as they think." When he made a small mistake, his inner voice said, "You always screw things up. You're going to lose this client." I asked David to spend a week simply noticing and writing down his self-talk. He was shocked by what he discovered. His inner voice was far more critical and negative than he would ever be to another person. He realized he was essentially bullying himself all day long. The first step in rewriting your inner story is becoming aware of the current story. Most people are so used to their inner critic that they don't even notice it anymore. It's like having a smoke alarm with a dying battery. The constant beeping becomes background noise until you consciously tune in and realize how annoying it is. For the next few days, I want you to pay attention to your self-talk, especially in challenging situations. When something goes wrong, what does your inner voice say? When you're facing a new challenge, what story does it tell you about your chances of success? When you look in the mirror, what commentary does it provide? Don't try to change anything yet. Just notice. Awareness is the first step to transformation. Once you become aware of your current inner story, you can begin to challenge it. Most negative self-talk is based on distorted thinking patterns that wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. For example, if your inner voice says, "I always mess things up," ask yourself, is this really true? Can I think of times when I handled things well? Is always an accurate word to use here? Often, you'll find that your inner critic is making sweeping generalizations based on limited evidence or isolated incidents. It's taking one mistake and turning it into a story about your entire character. It's taking one rejection and making it mean that you're fundamentally flawed. But here's the beautiful thing. Once you recognize these distorted thought patterns, you can start to rewrite them. Instead of, "I always mess things up," you might say, "I made a mistake, and that's how I learn and improve." Instead of, "I'm not smart enough," you might say, "I'm learning and growing every day." Instead of, "Everyone is judging me," you might say, "Most people are too busy with their own lives to judge me." and those who do judge me are revealing more about themselves than about me. David started practicing this reframing technique consistently. When his inner critic said, "Your work isn't good enough," he would respond with, "My work is continuously improving, and my clients choose to work with me because they value what I create." When the voice said, "You're going to lose this client," he would counter with, "I'm going to focus on doing my best work and communicating clearly with my client." The transformation was remarkable. Within a few months, David's anxiety decreased significantly, his confidence increased, and his business actually grew because he was no longer sabotaging himself with self-doubt. But rewriting your inner story goes beyond just challenging negative thoughts. It's also about consciously choosing to focus on empowering narratives about yourself and your life. Instead of seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, you can choose to see yourself as someone who learns and grows from every experience. Instead of focusing on your weaknesses, you can choose to focus on your strengths and how you're developing them. One powerful technique is to write yourself a letter from your future self, the person you're becoming through all your growth and learning. What would that wise, confident, successful version of yourself say to you right now? What encouragement would they offer? What perspective would they share about your current challenges? This isn't about positive thinking or denial. It's about choosing stories that empower you rather than stories that diminish you. It's about becoming the author of your own narrative instead of letting old programming write your story for you. The inner voice that once criticized and doubted can become your greatest ally and supporter. It can become the voice that encourages you to take healthy risks, reminds you of your strengths during difficult times, and helps you learn and grow from every experience. Chapter 5. The Power of Present Moment Living. Here's a question that might surprise you. Where do you spend most of your mental time? If you're like most people, you're either reliving the past or rehearsing the future, but you're rarely fully present in the only moment that actually exists right now. Think about it. How much time do you spend replaying conversations from yesterday, rehashing old mistakes, or dwelling on things you wish you had done differently? How much mental energy goes into worrying about tomorrow's meeting, next month's bills, or what might happen if various scenarios play out? Meanwhile, life is happening right now. Your children are growing up right now. Opportunities are presenting themselves right now. Beauty is surrounding you right now. Joy is available right now. But if your mind is stuck in yesterday or racing toward tomorrow, you're missing all of it. This isn't just a philosophical concept. It has profound implications for your emotional well-being. Anxiety is almost always about the future, about things that haven't happened yet and may never happen. Depression is often about the past, about losses, regrets, and things that can't be changed. But peace, calm, and contentment, they exist only in the present moment. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. I was working with a client named Jennifer, who was constantly stressed about her teenage daughter. Jennifer would lie awake at night worrying about whether her daughter would get into a good college, whether she was making good choices, whether she was prepared for the challenges of adulthood. During one of our sessions, I asked Jennifer, "How is your relationship with your daughter right now? In this moment?" She paused and said, "Actually, it's really good. We had a great conversation over breakfast this morning. She's been more open lately, and I can see she's growing into a wonderful young woman." "So the problem isn't what's happening now," I said. "The problem is what might happen later." Jennifer realized she was so busy worrying about future scenarios that she was missing the opportunity to enjoy and strengthen her relationship with her daughter in the present. This is what I call time travel syndrome, the habit of mentally leaving the present moment to visit either the past or the future. The irony is that the more time you spend worrying about the future, the less present you are to create the future you actually want. Present moment living isn't about being passive or ignoring planning and goal setting. It's about recognizing that all of your power exists in the present. You can't change the past from the past. You can only change your relationship to it from the present. You can't live in the future. You can only prepare for it from the present. Here's a simple but transformative practice that will anchor you in the present moment. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Whenever you notice your mind racing toward the future or getting stuck in the past, engage your senses to bring yourself back to now. Notice 5 things you can see around you right now. Really look at them. Their colors, shapes, textures. Notice 4 things you can touch. The temperature of the air on your skin, the texture of your clothes, the surface you're sitting on. Notice 3 things you can hear. Maybe it's traffic outside, the hum of an air conditioner, or the sound of your own breathing. Notice 2 things you can smell. Notice 1 thing you can taste. This simple exercise immediately brings you out of your head and into your body, out of time travel and into the present moment. It's like dropping an anchor in the sea of consciousness, giving you a stable point of reference in the here and now. Another powerful present moment practice is what I call single tasking meditation. Choose one routine activity: washing dishes, brushing your teeth, walking to your car, and do it with complete attention. Instead of letting your mind wander or multitasking, bring full awareness to the sensory experience of what you're doing. When you're washing dishes, notice the temperature of the water, the feeling of the soap, the sound of the bubbles, the circular motion of your hands. When you're brushing your teeth, notice the taste of the toothpaste, the sensation of the bristles, the rhythm of the brushing motion. This might sound boring, but it's actually incredibly peaceful and grounding. You'll be amazed at how much more enjoyable even mundane activities become when you give them your full attention. But perhaps the most important aspect of present moment living is learning to appreciate what's already here. Most people are constantly focused on what's missing, what's wrong, or what needs to be different. They think, I'll be happy when I get that promotion, or I'll be content when I lose weight, or I'll relax when this stressful period is over. But happiness isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of traveling. Peace isn't something you achieve. It's something you access. Right now, in this moment, there are countless things to appreciate if you're willing to notice them. The sound of your own breathing, which means you're alive. The fact that you have a roof over your head and food to eat. The relationships in your life, imperfect as they may be. The amazing capacity of your mind to learn and grow. The simple miracle of your heart beating without you having to think about it. When you start to really see and appreciate what's already present in your life, gratitude becomes effortless, and contentment becomes your natural state. You realize you don't need anything to be different to experience peace right now. I learned this lesson during a particularly difficult period when I was dealing with financial stress, relationship problems, and uncertainty about my career direction. I was so focused on fixing all these problems that I was missing the good things that were happening simultaneously. One evening, I was sitting on my porch feeling overwhelmed and anxious about the future when I noticed the sunset. It was absolutely beautiful, layers of pink and orange stretching across the sky. I realized I had been so caught up in my problems that I hadn't really looked at a sunset in months. As I sat there watching the sky change colors, I felt my anxiety melting away. None of my problems had changed, but something in me had shifted. I was present, I was aware, and I was connected to something larger than my temporary difficulties. That moment taught me that peace isn't the absence of problems, it's the presence of awareness. It's the ability to find stillness in the center of the storm, beauty in the midst of chaos, and gratitude even when life isn't going according to plan. Chapter 6. The Art of Self-Expression. One of the most overlooked causes of inner turmoil is the lack of authentic self-expression. When you constantly suppress your thoughts, feelings, creativity, and true nature to fit in or avoid conflict, you create internal pressure that eventually manifests as anxiety, depression, or explosive emotional outbursts. Think of self-expression like a river. When a river flows freely, it's beautiful, life-giving, and peaceful. But when you dam up a river, the water builds pressure behind the barrier. Eventually, that pressure becomes so intense that it either finds a way around the dam or breaks through it entirely, often causing destruction in the process. Your thoughts, feelings, and creative energy are like that river water. When you allow them to flow naturally through healthy expression, you feel vibrant, authentic, and at peace. But when you constantly hold them back out of fear, shame, or the desire to please others, you create internal pressure that steals your calm and dampens your natural positivity. I learned this lesson through my own experience with perfectionism and people-pleasing. For years, I was so concerned with saying the right thing, looking the right way, and meeting everyone else's expectations that I lost touch with who I actually was. I became like an actor playing a role, but I had forgotten the script was supposed to be my own life. The breaking point came during a family gathering where my uncle made a comment that I found deeply offensive. Instead of speaking up, I smiled politely and said nothing, just like I always did. But inside, I was seething. I spent the rest of the evening feeling angry, not just at my uncle, but at myself for not having the courage to express my true thoughts. That night, I realized I had been doing this my entire life, swallowing my words, suppressing my opinions, and hiding my authentic self to avoid potential conflict or rejection. No wonder I felt so anxious and disconnected all the time. I was living as a watered-down version of myself. Self-expression doesn't mean you have to share every thought with every person or become confrontational. It means creating healthy outlets for your inner world and learning to communicate authentically with the people who matter most to you. One of the most powerful forms of self-expression is journaling, but not the kind where you just record what happened during your day. I'm talking about raw, honest, stream of consciousness writing where you dump everything that's in your mind onto paper without worrying about grammar, spelling, or whether it makes sense. Set a timer for 10 minutes and write continuously about whatever is on your mind. Don't edit yourself. Don't worry about being positive or negative. Just let everything flow out. Write about your fears, your dreams, your frustrations, your hopes, your random thoughts, your deep insights. The key is to write without judgment or censorship. This practice is incredibly therapeutic because it gives your inner world permission to exist outside your head. When you hold thoughts and feelings inside, they tend to loop and intensify. But when you express them externally, even if it's just on paper, they lose much of their emotional charge. Another profound form of self-expression is creativity. Every human being is creative, even if you don't think of yourself that way. Creativity isn't just about making art or music. It's about bringing something new into existence, whether that's a garden, a meal, a solution to a problem, or a way of arranging your living space. I once worked with a client named Maria who was going through a difficult divorce and felt like her life was falling apart. She had never considered herself creative, but I encouraged her to find some form of artistic expression as a way to process her emotions. Maria decided to try painting, even though she hadn't touched a paintbrush since elementary school. At first, she was frustrated because her paintings didn't look like anything recognizable, but I encouraged her to focus on the process rather than the product, to simply let her emotions flow through the colors and brushstrokes. What happened was remarkable. As Maria painted, she found herself releasing emotions she didn't even know she was carrying. Some paintings were dark and chaotic, reflecting her anger and confusion. Others were surprisingly light and hopeful, revealing parts of herself that were excited about starting fresh. The paintings themselves weren't masterpieces, but they served as a bridge between Maria's inner world and external reality. They gave her a way to express complex emotions that she couldn't put into words. More importantly, the act of creating helped her reconnect with a part of herself that she had neglected for years. Physical movement is another powerful form of self-expression. Your body holds emotions and energy, and sometimes the best way to release what's stuck inside is through movement. This doesn't mean you have to become a dancer or athlete. It could be as simple as putting on music and moving however feels good, taking a walk in nature while letting your mind wander, or doing stretching exercises that help you connect with your physical self. But perhaps the most important form of self-expression is learning to share your authentic thoughts and feelings with the people closest to you. This is often the scariest form of expression because it involves vulnerability and the risk of rejection or conflict. Start small. Practice sharing one genuine thought or feeling each day with someone you trust. It might be telling a friend that you appreciated something they did, expressing disagreement with a colleague in a respectful way, or letting your partner know about something that's been bothering you. The key is to express yourself from a place of authenticity rather than a desire to control outcomes. You're not sharing to get a specific response or to change someone else's behavior. You're sharing because your thoughts and feelings matter and deserve to exist in the world. I remember the first time I told a friend that something they had said hurt my feelings. I was terrified they would get angry or defensive, but instead, they thanked me for being honest and apologized. They said they had no idea their comment was hurtful, and they appreciated knowing so they could be more thoughtful in the future. That experience taught me that most people actually appreciate authentic communication more than the polite facade we often hide behind. When you express yourself genuinely, you give others permission to do the same, which creates deeper, more meaningful relationships. The beautiful thing about authentic self-expression is that it creates a positive feedback loop. The more you express your true self, the more comfortable you become with who you are. The more comfortable you are with yourself, the less you need others' approval to feel worthy. The less you need others' approval, the freer you become to express yourself authentically. This freedom from the constant need for external validation is one of the greatest sources of inner peace available to human beings. When you know that your worth isn't dependent on others' opinions, you can navigate life with a calm confidence that's unshakable. Chapter 7. The Forgiveness Revolution. If I told you there was one practice that could free you from years of emotional baggage, improve your relationships, reduce your stress levels, and dramatically increase your inner peace, would you be interested? That practice is forgiveness. But not the kind of forgiveness you might think. Most people misunderstand forgiveness. They think it means excusing bad behavior, letting people off the hook, or pretending that hurtful things didn't happen. They think forgiveness is something you do for other people, a gift you give to those who have wronged you. But here's the truth that will revolutionize your understanding. Forgiveness isn't about other people at all. Forgiveness is about setting yourself free from the prison of resentment, anger, and victimhood. It's about choosing your own peace over your desire for revenge or justice. When you hold on to anger and resentment, you're essentially taking poison and hoping the other person will get sick. You're allowing someone who hurt you in the past to continue hurting you in the present. Every time you replay the offense in your mind, every time you tell the story of how you were wronged, every time you fantasize about getting even, you're giving that person power over your emotional state. Let me share the story of how I learned this lesson. Several years ago, a business partner betrayed my trust in a way that cost me a significant amount of money and damaged my reputation in my industry. I was furious, hurt, and felt completely justified in my anger. For months, I carried this resentment like a heavy backpack. I would wake up thinking about what they had done, spend hours during the day planning how I might get revenge, or at least ensure they faced consequences for their actions. I told the story to anyone who would listen, each time feeling the anger fresh and raw. But gradually, I began to notice something troubling. My business partner seemed to be moving on with their life just fine while I was stuck in a constant state of anger and stress. They were sleeping peacefully while I was lying awake, replaying scenarios of confrontation. They were focusing on their future while I was trapped in the past. I realized that my resentment wasn't hurting them at all, it was only hurting me. I was the one paying the price for their mistake, not just financially, but emotionally and physically. My anger was affecting my other relationships, my work performance, and my overall quality of life. That's when I made a decision that felt counterintuitive but changed everything. I chose to forgive them. Not because they deserved it, not because they had apologized or made amends, but because I deserved to be free from the burden of carrying their mistake around with me. Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight, especially for deep hurts. It's a process, not a single event. But the moment I decided to forgive, something shifted inside me. The heavy feeling in my chest began to lift. The obsessive thoughts about revenge began to fade. I started sleeping better and feeling more like myself again. But here's what really surprised me. Forgiving that business partner wasn't the end of the forgiveness journey, it was just the beginning. As I learned to forgive others, I discovered that the person I most needed to forgive was myself. We are often our own harshest critics, carrying around guilt and shame for mistakes we made years or even decades ago. We replay our failures, criticize our choices, and punish ourselves for not being perfect. This self-directed resentment is just as toxic as holding grudges against others, maybe even more so. Self-forgiveness is one of the most challenging but liberating practices you can engage in. It requires you to acknowledge your mistakes without minimizing them, take responsibility without drowning in shame, and commit to doing better without demanding perfection from yourself. I remember working with a client named Robert, who had been carrying guilt for over 20 years about a drunk driving incident in college. No one was hurt, but he had put people at risk, and he couldn't forgive himself for the stupidity and selfishness of his actions. This guilt was poisoning every area of Robert's life. He sabotaged relationships because he didn't feel worthy of love. He turned down career opportunities because he didn't think he deserved success. He lived in a constant state of low-level depression because he couldn't forgive himself for a mistake he made when he was barely an adult. Working with Robert on self-forgiveness was a gradual process. We had to help him see the difference between accountability and self-torture. Accountability meant acknowledging the seriousness of what he had done, learning from it, and committing to never repeat that behavior. Self-torture meant punishing himself indefinitely for a mistake that couldn't be undone. The breakthrough came when Robert realized that his refusal to forgive himself wasn't serving anyone. It wasn't making him a better person or preventing future mistakes. It was just keeping him stuck in shame and preventing him from contributing positively to the world. Once Robert forgave himself, he became passionate about drunk driving prevention. He started volunteering with organizations that educated young people about the dangers of impaired driving. He turned his mistake into a mission, using his guilt as fuel for positive action rather than self-destruction. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of forgiveness. Crown. It transforms pain into purpose. When you forgive others, you free yourself to love more fully. When you forgive yourself, you free yourself to become the person you're meant to be. But forgiveness goes beyond just the big hurts and major betrayals. It also includes the daily practice of letting go of small irritations and disappointments. The driver who cut you off in traffic, the coworker who took credit for your idea, the friend who canceled plans at the last minute. These minor offenses can accumulate and create a background level of resentment that steals your peace. Practice forgiveness in real time throughout your day. When someone does something that irritates you, instead of holding on to the feeling, consciously choose to let it go. This doesn't mean you can't address the behavior if it's a pattern or if it significantly affects you. It just means you don't carry the emotional charge of every small offense. One technique I find helpful is what I call the forgiveness breath. When someone does something that triggers anger or resentment, take a deep breath and silently say, "I forgive you, and I free myself from carrying this hurt." Then consciously release the tension in your body as you exhale. This simple practice prevents minor irritations from building up into major resentments. It keeps your emotional slate clean and maintains your inner peace even when others behave poorly. The ultimate goal of forgiveness is freedom. Freedom from the past, freedom from resentment, freedom from the need for others to be different for you to be happy. When you master forgiveness, you discover that your peace is not dependent on how others treat you or even on how perfectly you navigate life. Your peace comes from your ability to release what cannot be changed and focus on what can be. Chapter 8. The Science of Boundaries. One of the fastest ways to destroy your inner peace is to live without clear boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that protect your energy, time, and emotional well-being while allowing healthy relationships to flourish. Most people who struggle with anxiety, overwhelm, and resentment have one thing in common. They have poor boundaries. They say yes when they mean no. They take on other people's problems as their own. They allow toxic behavior to continue unchecked, and they sacrifice their own needs to avoid disappointing others. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many of us were taught that having boundaries is selfish, that good people always put others first, and that saying no makes us mean or uncaring. But here's the truth. Having healthy boundaries doesn't make you selfish. It makes you sustainable. Think about it this way. Airplane safety instructions tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. This isn't because you matter more than the person next to you. It's because you can't help anyone if you're unconscious. Similarly, you can't be genuinely helpful to others if you're burned out, resentful, and depleted from constantly giving more than you have to give. Let me share the story of Linda, a client who came to me because she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Linda was a single mother, working full-time, while also caring for her elderly parents. Her ex-husband regularly called her to complain about his problems. Her sister constantly asked her to babysit. Her co-workers dumped their projects on her because she never said no, and her friends treated her like a free therapist. Linda was exhausted, resentful, and felt like everyone was taking advantage of her kindness. But when I suggested she needed to set some boundaries, her first response was, "But I can't let people down. What if they get angry? What if they don't like me anymore?" This is the fear that keeps most people trapped in boundaryless living. The fear that saying no will damage relationships or make people think poorly of them. But here's what Linda discovered, and what you'll discover too. Healthy boundaries actually improve relationships by creating clarity, respect, and sustainability. The first type of boundary you need to master is the time boundary. Your time is your most precious resource, and how you spend it determines the quality of your life. Yet many people treat their time like it's unlimited and available to anyone who asks for it. Time boundaries mean having clear guidelines about how you spend your time and communicating those guidelines to others. It might mean setting specific hours when you're available for work calls and sticking to them. It might mean scheduling time for yourself and treating those appointments as seriously as you would a meeting with your boss. For Linda, setting time boundaries meant telling her ex-husband that she was only available to discuss issues related to their children and only during specific hours. It meant telling her sister that she needed advance notice for babysitting requests and that she could only help once a month. It meant leaving work at a reasonable hour instead of staying late to finish other people's projects. The second crucial boundary is the emotional boundary. This means taking responsibility for your own emotions while refusing to take responsibility for others' emotions. Many people are emotional sponges, absorbing the moods, feelings, and energy of everyone around them. Emotional boundaries mean recognizing when someone else's drama, anxiety, or negativity is affecting your emotional state and consciously choosing not to absorb it. It means being compassionate without becoming enmeshed. It means caring about others without carrying their emotional burdens as your own. I learned about emotional boundaries the hard way when I was in a friendship with someone who was constantly in crisis. Every conversation was about their latest drama, their overwhelming problems, their terrible luck. I found myself dreading their phone calls because I knew I would hang up feeling drained and depressed. At first, I thought being a good friend meant absorbing all their negativity and trying to fix their problems. But I gradually realized that my constant emotional availability wasn't actually helping them. It was just enabling them to avoid taking responsibility for their own emotional state while destroying my peace of mind. Setting an emotional boundary in that relationship meant telling my friend that I cared about them, but that our conversations had become too negative for me to handle. I suggested they consider talking to a therapist about their problems and asked if we could focus more on positive topics when we talked. They didn't like the boundary at first, but ultimately it improved our friendship. They did start seeing a therapist, and our conversations became more balanced and enjoyable for both of us. The third type of boundary is the energy boundary. Some people are energy vampires. They leave you feeling drained, exhausted, and depleted after spending time with them. Others are energy givers. They leave you feeling uplifted, inspired, and energized. Energy boundaries mean being intentional about who you spend time with and how much energy you invest in different relationships. It means limiting your exposure to people who consistently drain you and increasing your investment in relationships that mutually energize and support both parties. This doesn't mean you cut off everyone who's going through a difficult time or who needs support. It means recognizing the difference between temporary situations where someone needs extra help and chronic patterns where someone consistently takes more than they give. The fourth boundary is the boundary around your values and beliefs. This means being clear about what you stand for and not compromising your integrity to please others or avoid conflict. It means expressing your opinions respectfully but clearly when appropriate, and not pretending to agree with things you fundamentally disagree with. Value boundaries might mean declining to participate in gossip, even if everyone else is doing it. It might mean speaking up when someone makes a comment that conflicts with your core beliefs. It might mean choosing not to attend events or participate in activities that violate your principles. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing practice that requires consistency and courage. People will test your boundaries, especially at first. They might get angry, try to guilt you, or attempt to negotiate your limits. This is normal and doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. The key is to remain calm, kind, and consistent. You don't need to justify your boundaries or convince anyone that they're reasonable. A simple, "That doesn't work for me," or "I'm not available for that," is often sufficient. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by what you accept. When you consistently maintain healthy boundaries, you train the people in your life to respect your time, energy, and needs. Those who truly care about you will adjust their behavior. Those who don't respect your boundaries reveal that they were more interested in what you could do for them than in having a genuine relationship with you. Chapter 9. The Ritual of Daily Reflection. In our fast-paced, constantly connected world, most people live their lives on autopilot, rushing from one task to the next without ever pausing to process, learn, or integrate their experiences. This constant forward momentum might feel productive, but it actually prevents the kind of deep learning and emotional processing that creates lasting calm and positivity. Daily reflection is like hitting the pause button on life's remote control. It's a practice that transforms ordinary experiences into wisdom, chaos into clarity, and reactivity into intentionality. It's the difference between living your life and learning from your life. Most people think they don't have time for reflection, but the truth is, you can't afford not to reflect. Without reflection, you're doomed to repeat the same mistakes, miss valuable lessons, and live in a constant state of reaction rather than conscious creation. Let me share how this practice transformed my own life. For years, I would collapse into bed each night feeling like the day had happened to me, rather than feeling like I had actively participated in creating it. I would wake up the next morning and repeat the same patterns, react to situations in the same ways, and make the same types of mistakes without even realizing it. But when I started dedicating just 10 minutes each evening to reflection, everything changed. I began to see patterns in my behavior, identify triggers that threw me off balance, and recognize opportunities for growth that I had been missing. Most importantly, I started to feel like the author of my own life, rather than just a character reacting to whatever happened to me. Effective reflection isn't just thinking about your day. It's a structured practice that helps you extract maximum learning and growth from your experiences. The key is asking yourself the right questions that prompt insight rather than just rehashing events. Here are the 3 foundational questions that form the core of transformative daily reflection. What did I do well today? This question trains your brain to notice your successes, wise choices, and moments of growth. Most people are much better at remembering their mistakes than their victories, but focusing on what you did well builds confidence and reinforces positive patterns. This isn't about big achievements or perfect performance. It's about acknowledging the small wins that add up to create a fulfilling life. Maybe you chose to respond calmly in a stressful situation instead of reacting emotionally. Maybe you took time to really listen to someone who needed to be heard. Maybe you made a healthy choice when it would have been easier to take the less healthy option. By consciously acknowledging these positive choices, you increase the likelihood that you'll make similar choices in the future. You're literally rewiring your brain to notice and repeat successful patterns. The second question is, what could I have handled differently? Notice that this isn't, what did I do wrong? Or, how did I fail? This reframing is crucial because it approaches mistakes and challenges with curiosity rather than judgment. It positions setbacks as learning opportunities rather than character flaws. This question helps you identify areas for growth without triggering shame or self-criticism. When you ask yourself what you could have handled differently, you're acknowledging that you always have choices and that you can learn to make better choices in the future. For example, instead of thinking, I'm terrible at public speaking, after a presentation that didn't go well, you might reflect, I could have prepared more thoroughly and practiced managing my nervousness beforehand. This perspective empowers you to improve rather than just criticizing yourself. The third question is, what am I grateful for from today? This question ensures that your reflection practice contributes to your overall positivity and emotional well-being. Even on difficult days, there are usually small moments of grace, kindness, or beauty that you can acknowledge and appreciate. Gratitude in reflection isn't just about listing obvious blessings. It's about developing the ability to find value and meaning in unexpected places. Maybe you're grateful for the coworker who challenged your idea because it forced you to think more deeply. Maybe you're grateful for the traffic jam that gave you time to think. Maybe you're grateful for the difficult conversation that cleared the air in a relationship. But daily reflection goes beyond just these 3 questions. As you develop this practice, you can add layers that deepen your self-awareness and accelerate your growth. One powerful addition is emotional reflection. What emotions did I experience today, and what triggered them? This helps you become more aware of your emotional patterns and the situations or thoughts that tend to throw you off balance. For instance, you might notice that you always feel anxious after checking social media, or that you feel energized after spending time in nature, or that certain types of conversations leave you feeling drained. This awareness allows you to make more intentional choices about how you spend your time and energy. Another valuable component is relationship reflection. How did I show up in my relationships today? What did I contribute to the interactions I had? This isn't about judging whether others treated you well or poorly. It's about taking responsibility for your own role in your relationships. Maybe you realize you were more patient with your children today, or that you listened more carefully to your partner, or that you were more supportive of a colleague who was struggling. Or maybe you recognize that you were distracted during conversations, or that you reacted defensively when someone gave you feedback. This type of reflection helps you become more intentional about the kind of friend, partner, parent, or colleague you want to be. It transforms relationships from things that happen to you into relationships you actively create and nurture. You can also include future-focused reflection. Based on what I learned today, how do I want to approach tomorrow? This connects your reflection to action, ensuring that insights translate into changed behavior. This might mean setting an intention to be more present during conversations, or planning to take breaks throughout the day to manage stress, or deciding to speak up in a situation where you normally stay silent. The key to making reflection a sustainable practice is to keep it simple and consistent. Find a time that works for your schedule. Maybe it's while you're having your morning coffee, during your commute, or right before bed. Start with just 5 or 10 minutes and focus on consistency rather than perfection. You might choose to reflect silently, write in a journal, or even record voice memos to yourself. The format matters less than the consistency and the quality of attention you bring to the practice. Over time, you'll find that daily reflection creates a positive feedback loop. The more you reflect, the more conscious you become during your daily experiences. The more conscious you become, the better choices you make. The better choices you make, the more positive experiences you have to reflect on. Chapter 10. Building Mental Resilience. Life will test you. This isn't pessimism, it's reality. You will face setbacks, disappointments, losses, and challenges that shake you to your core. The question isn't whether these things will happen, but how you'll respond when they do. This is where mental resilience comes in. Mental resilience isn't about being tough or unemotional. It's not about pretending that difficult things don't hurt, or that you're unaffected by life's challenges. True resilience is the ability to feel the full impact of difficult experiences while maintaining your capacity to recover, learn, and continue moving forward. Think of resilience like a tree in a storm. The tree that survives isn't the one that's rigid and unyielding. The tree breaks when the wind gets strong enough. The tree that survives is the one that bends with the wind, that has deep roots to anchor it, and that can flex and adapt while maintaining its essential structure. Building mental resilience is like developing any other strength. It requires consistent practice and gradual progression. You don't build physical strength by trying to lift the heaviest weight on your first day at the gym. Similarly, you build mental resilience by practicing with smaller challenges so you're prepared when bigger ones come along. One of the most important components of resilience is what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt your thinking when circumstances change. Most people get stuck in rigid thought patterns that worked in one situation but become obstacles in new situations. For example, if you grew up in a family where conflict was dangerous, you might have learned to avoid confrontation at all costs. This strategy might have protected you as a child, but as an adult, it might prevent you from standing up for yourself or addressing important issues in your relationships. Cognitive flexibility means recognizing when old patterns are no longer serving you and developing new ways of thinking and responding. It's the difference between being a victim of your conditioning and being the conscious architect of your own responses. I learned about cognitive flexibility during one of the most challenging periods of my career. I had built a successful business using strategies that worked well in a growing economy, but when the market shifted, those same strategies began to fail. My first instinct was to work harder using the same approaches, but the harder I worked, the worse things got. The breakthrough came when I realized I needed to completely change my thinking about my business. Instead of trying to force old strategies to work in new circumstances, I had to develop entirely new approaches. This required letting go of methods I had become attached to and being willing to experiment with unfamiliar territory. The process was uncomfortable and uncertain, but it taught me that resilience often requires the courage to abandon what's familiar for what's necessary. The business not only recovered but became more successful than it had ever been. And I learned that I was capable of adapting to changes that initially seemed overwhelming. Another crucial element of resilience is what I call meaning-making ability, the capacity to find purpose and significance even in difficult experiences. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, observed that the prisoners who survived the concentration camps weren't necessarily the physically strongest, but those who were able to find meaning in their suffering. This doesn't mean you should be grateful for traumatic experiences or pretend that bad things are actually good. It means developing the ability to extract value, learning, or purpose from even the most challenging circumstances. When you can find meaning in difficulty, it transforms from something that happens to you into something that contributes to your growth, wisdom, or ability to help others. This shift in perspective doesn't eliminate the pain, but it prevents the pain from being purely destructive. A powerful practice for building meaning-making ability is the legacy question. How might this experience, as difficult as it is, prepare me to help others who face similar challenges? Or, what strengths is this situation calling me to develop that I might not have discovered otherwise? I once worked with a woman named Sarah, who was devastated by a miscarriage. The loss was heartbreaking, and the grief seemed unbearable. But over time, Sarah was able to find meaning in her experience by becoming a support person for other women going through pregnancy loss. Her own pain gave her a deep empathy and understanding that allowed her to help others in ways that someone who hadn't experienced that loss simply couldn't. This didn't make the miscarriage worth it or eliminate her grief, but it transformed a purely painful experience into something that also contributed to healing and connection for others. Building resilience also requires developing what psychologists call emotional regulation skills, the ability to experience intense emotions without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. This goes back to the emotional resetting techniques we discussed earlier, but at a deeper level. Emotional regulation isn't about suppressing feelings or pretending to be positive when you're not. It's about learning to surf emotional waves rather than being knocked over by them. It's about recognizing that emotions, no matter how intense, are temporary experiences that will pass if you don't feed them with catastrophic thoughts. One of the most powerful emotional regulation techniques is called emotional labeling. When you're experiencing a strong emotion, simply naming it accurately can reduce its intensity and give you more space to choose your response. Instead of thinking, "I feel terrible," try to be more specific. "I'm feeling anxious about this presentation." Or, "I'm feeling disappointed about not getting that job." Or, "I'm feeling overwhelmed by all these demands on my time." This simple practice activates the logical part of your brain and reduces the emotional hijacking that prevents clear thinking. Resilience also requires building what I call recovery rituals, specific practices that help you bounce back more quickly from setbacks and challenges. These are different for everyone, but they typically include elements that restore your physical energy, emotional balance, and mental clarity. Your recovery rituals might include physical activities like exercise or time in nature, creative outlets like music or art, social connections with supportive people, spiritual practices like meditation or prayer, or simple comfort activities like reading or taking a warm bath. The key is to identify what actually helps you recover and to use these practices proactively rather than waiting until you're in crisis. Think of recovery rituals like maintenance for your mental and emotional well-being, regular practices that keep you functioning at your best and help you bounce back quickly when life knocks you down. Perhaps most importantly, building resilience requires accepting that struggle is a normal part of the human experience, not a sign that something is wrong with you or your life. Our culture often promotes the illusion that life should be easy and comfortable, that if you're doing things right, you shouldn't face significant challenges. But this expectation actually makes you less resilient because it makes you interpret normal life difficulties as evidence of failure or inadequacy. When you accept that challenges are an inevitable part of growth and that your worth isn't determined by how smoothly your life goes, you develop the emotional strength to handle whatever comes your way. Resilience isn't built overnight, and it's not a destination you arrive at once and for all. It's an ongoing practice of developing the mental, emotional, and spiritual resources that allow you to not just survive life's challenges, but to emerge from them stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. Chapter 11. The Power of Visualization. Your mind is the most powerful creative tool you possess, but most people use it like a broken television stuck on the horror channel. They spend their mental energy visualizing worst-case scenarios, replaying past failures, and imagining all the ways things could go wrong. But what if I told you that this same mental faculty could be your greatest ally in creating calm, positivity, and success? Visualization isn't wishful thinking or fantasy. It's a scientifically proven technique that programs your subconscious mind, primes your nervous system for success, and literally rewires your brain to recognize and create the outcomes you desire. When you visualize effectively, you're essentially rehearsing success in your mind, making it more likely to occur in reality. The reason visualization works so powerfully is that your brain doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. When you imagine yourself handling a challenging situation with calm confidence, your brain creates the same neural pathways as if you had actually done it. This mental rehearsal prepares you to respond skillfully when similar situations arise in real life. Athletes have been using visualization for decades to improve their performance. Olympic swimmers visualize every stroke of their races. Professional golfers mentally rehearse their swings before important shots. Basketball players visualize successful free throws before stepping up to the line. These aren't just feel-good exercises, they're proven methods for programming the mind and body for peak performance. But visualization isn't just for athletes. You can use this same technique to program yourself for calm responses to stress, positive interactions with difficult people, successful presentations at work, or any other outcome you want to create in your life. Let me share how visualization transformed my own relationship with public speaking. For years, I was terrified of speaking in front of groups. My heart would race, my palms would sweat, and my mind would go blank whenever I had to present to more than a few people. The fear was so intense that I would spend weeks beforehand imagining all the ways the presentation could go wrong. Then I learned about visualization and decided to flip the script. Instead of mentally rehearsing disaster, I began spending 10 minutes each day visualizing myself giving presentations with calm confidence. I imagined walking into the room, feeling relaxed and prepared. I visualized making eye contact with the audience, speaking clearly and engagingly, and receiving positive feedback afterwards. At first, these visualizations felt forced and unrealistic. But I continued the practice consistently, and gradually, something shifted. When the day of my next presentation arrived, I felt calmer than I had in years. During the presentation, I found myself naturally doing many of the things I had visualized, making eye contact, speaking clearly, even enjoying the interaction with the audience. That experience taught me that visualization isn't about creating false confidence or denying real challenges. It's about programming your mind and nervous system to respond resourcefully rather than reactively to difficult situations. Here's how to practice effective visualization for calm and positivity. First, choose a specific situation, that typically triggers stress or anxiety for you. It might be a difficult conversation you need to have, a work challenge you're facing, or simply getting through a busy day while maintaining your peace of mind. Find a quiet place where you won't be interrupted and close your eyes. Begin by taking several deep breaths to relax your body and calm your mind. Now, imagine yourself in that challenging situation, but see yourself responding exactly as you would like to respond. Make the visualization as detailed and vivid as possible. See yourself standing or sitting with confident posture. Hear yourself speaking with a calm, clear voice. Feel the sensation of being relaxed and centered in your body. Notice the positive responses of others around you. Experience the satisfaction of handling the situation skillfully. The key is to engage all your senses in the visualization. Don't just see the scene. Hear the sounds. Feel the physical sensations. Even imagine any relevant smells or tastes. The more senses you involve, the more real the experience becomes to your subconscious mind. If negative thoughts or images try to intrude during your visualization, gently redirect your attention back to the positive outcome you're creating. Don't fight the negative thoughts. Simply acknowledge them and return your focus to what you want to experience. Practice this visualization for 5 to 10 minutes daily, ideally at the same time each day. Consistency is more important than duration. A 5-minute daily practice will be more effective than an hour-long session once a week. But visualization goes beyond just preparing for specific challenges. You can also use it to cultivate general states of calm and positivity that become your default way of being in the world. One powerful technique is what I call identity visualization. Instead of just imagining yourself handling specific situations well, visualize yourself as someone who naturally embodies the qualities you want to develop. See yourself as a naturally calm person, someone who radiates positivity, someone who handles challenges with grace and wisdom. Create a detailed mental image of this ideal version of yourself. How do they move through the world? How do they treat others? How do they respond to stress? What kind of energy do they bring to every situation? Spend time each day mentally stepping into this identity and experiencing what it feels like to be this person. I worked with a client named Jennifer who struggled with chronic anxiety and negative thinking. She began practicing identity visualization, imagining herself as someone who was naturally peaceful and optimistic. She visualized this ideal version of herself, waking up, feeling grateful, approaching challenges with curiosity rather than fear, and maintaining calm even in stressful situations. Over time, Jennifer began to notice that she was naturally becoming more like the person she was visualizing. Her default mental state shifted from anxiety to calm, and she found herself responding to situations in the positive ways she had been imagining. The visualization had literally reprogrammed her identity at a subconscious level. Another powerful application of visualization is creating what I call sanctuary spaces in your mind. These are detailed mental environments that you can visit whenever you need to restore your calm and positivity. Your sanctuary might be a peaceful beach where you can hear the waves and feel the warm sand beneath your feet. It might be a cozy cabin in the mountains surrounded by tall trees and fresh air. It might be a beautiful garden filled with flowers and the sound of birds singing. The key is to create a space that feels completely safe, peaceful, and restorative to you. Spend time developing the details of your sanctuary. What does it look like? What sounds do you hear? What does the air smell like? What's the temperature? Are there any special objects or features that make this space meaningful to you? Once you've created this mental sanctuary, you can visit it whenever you need a moment of peace. If you're feeling overwhelmed at work, take 2 minutes to close your eyes and mentally transport yourself to your sanctuary. If you're lying in bed with racing thoughts, spend some time in your peaceful mental space before sleep. This technique is particularly powerful because it gives you a reliable way to access calm and positivity regardless of your external circumstances. Your sanctuary is always available to you, no matter where you are or what's happening around you. Visualization can also be used to release negative emotions and energy. If you're carrying anger, sadness, or stress, you can visualize these emotions as dark energy leaving your body. Imagine the negative energy flowing out through your breath, dissolving into light, or being absorbed harmlessly by the earth. Some people find it helpful to visualize negative emotions as objects that they can release. You might imagine anger as a heavy stone that you place on the ground and walk away from. You might visualize sadness as gray clouds that you allow to float away. You might see stress as muddy water that you wash off in a clear, cleansing stream. The beauty of visualization is that it's completely under your control. In your mental world, you can create any outcome, embody any quality, and access any resource you need. This isn't escapism, it's mental training that prepares you to bring these same qualities and outcomes into your real-world experiences. Remember, your mind is constantly creating images and scenarios anyway. The question is whether you're going to let it run wild with fearful fantasies and worst-case scenarios, or whether you're going to consciously direct it toward the outcomes and experiences you actually want to create. Chapter 12. The discipline of daily habits. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your daily habits. This might sound overly simple, but it's profoundly true. Every thought you think repeatedly, every action you take consistently, and every choice you make habitually is literally shaping your brain, your body, and your life experience. Most people underestimate the power of small, consistent actions because the results aren't immediately visible. They're looking for dramatic transformations that happen overnight. But real change occurs through the compound effect of tiny improvements repeated consistently over time. Think about it this way. If you improved just 1% every day for a year, you would be 37 times better by the end of that year. But if you got just 1% worse every day for a year, you would decline nearly down to zero. This is the mathematics of habit formation. Small changes seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound over time to create massive results. The challenge is that our brains are wired for immediate gratification, not long-term thinking. When you choose to meditate for 10 minutes instead of scrolling social media, the immediate payoff seems minimal. When you choose a healthy meal over junk food, you don't instantly feel dramatically different. When you choose to practice gratitude instead of complaining, the world doesn't immediately transform. But here's what happens when you make these small positive choices consistently. Your brain literally rewires itself to support these new patterns. Your nervous system adapts to higher levels of calm and positivity. Your body becomes stronger and more resilient. Your relationships improve because you're showing up as a better version of yourself. The key to sustainable habit formation is starting much smaller than you think you should. Most people fail at building new habits because they try to change too much too quickly. They decide they're going to meditate for an hour, exercise for 90 minutes, journal for 30 minutes, and completely overhaul their diet all at the same time. This approach almost always leads to overwhelm and eventual abandonment of the new habits. Instead, start with what I call micro-habits, actions so small that they're almost impossible to fail at, but that point you in the direction of your larger goals. For example, if you want to develop a meditation practice, don't start with 30-minute sessions. Start with 1 minute. If 1 minute feels too long, start with 3 deep breaths. If you want to exercise regularly, don't commit to hour-long gym sessions. Start with 10 push-ups or a 5-minute walk. The goal of micro-habits isn't to create dramatic results immediately. It's to establish the neural pathways and identity shifts that will support larger changes over time. When you meditate for 1 minute consistently for a month, you become someone who meditates. When you do 10 push-ups every day for a month, you become someone who exercises. These identity shifts are far more powerful than willpower in sustaining long-term change. Let me share how this principle transformed my own morning routine. For years, I had chaotic mornings that set a stressful tone for my entire day. I would wake up rushed, immediately check my phone, gulp down coffee while mentally rehearsing my to-do list, and launch into my day feeling reactive and overwhelmed. I knew I wanted to create a more peaceful morning routine, but every time I tried to implement elaborate rituals involving meditation, journaling, exercise, and healthy breakfast preparation, I would stick with it for a few days before abandoning it as too time-consuming and complicated. Finally, I decided to start with just one tiny change: drinking a full glass of water before doing anything else in the morning. That's it. No meditation, no journaling, no exercise, just drinking water. This habit was so small that it took less than a minute and was virtually impossible to skip. After a month of consistently drinking water first thing in the morning, I added another micro habit: taking 5 deep breaths before checking my phone. Again, this took less than a minute and required no special equipment or preparation. Gradually, over the course of 6 months, I built a morning routine that included hydration, breathing exercises, brief meditation, gratitude journaling, and light movement. But I never would have sustained this routine if I had tried to implement it all at once. Each small habit built momentum for the next one. The power of micro-habits is that they remove the friction and resistance that usually sabotage our good intentions. When an action is so small that it requires minimal willpower, you can maintain it even on days when you feel tired, busy, or unmotivated. And on days when you feel energetic and inspired, you can naturally expand beyond the minimum requirement. But habit formation isn't just about adding positive behaviors. It's also about replacing negative patterns that steal your calm and positivity. Many people have unconscious habits that create stress and negativity throughout their day. Common negative habits include immediately checking phones upon waking, which floods your mind with information and other people's priorities before you've even centered yourself for the day. Complaining as a default way of processing experiences, which trains your brain to focus on problems rather than solutions. Rushing through daily activities without presence or awareness, which creates a constant underlying stress even when there's no real urgency. The key to changing negative habits is not to try to eliminate them through willpower alone, but to replace them with positive alternatives. Instead of trying to stop checking your phone in the morning, create a positive routine that happens before you allow yourself phone access. Instead of trying to stop complaining, develop a practice of finding one positive aspect of challenging situations. Instead of trying to stop rushing, build in small pauses throughout your day where you consciously slow down and breathe. One of the most transformative daily habits you can develop is what I call mindful transitions. Most people move through their day unconsciously, shifting from activity to activity without any pause or awareness. This creates a sense of being carried along by life rather than consciously participating in it. Mindful transitions involve taking a brief pause between activities to center yourself and set an intention for what comes next. When you finish one task and are about to begin another, take 3 conscious breaths and ask yourself, how do I want to show up for this next activity? This simple practice, done consistently throughout the day, maintains your connection to calm presence rather than allowing you to get swept away by the momentum of constant doing. Another powerful daily habit is what I call appreciation scanning. At least 3 times throughout your day, pause for 30 seconds and consciously notice something you can appreciate in that moment. It might be the feeling of sunlight on your skin, the taste of your morning coffee, a kind gesture from a colleague, or simply the fact that your body is healthy and functioning. This practice trains your brain to notice positive aspects of your experience that you would normally overlook. Over time, it shifts your default mental state from focusing on problems to recognizing abundance. The beautiful thing about developing positive daily habits is that they create what psychologists call positive affect spirals. When you start your day with practices that cultivate calm and positivity, you're more likely to make positive choices throughout the day. These positive choices reinforce your sense of well-being, which makes it easier to maintain your positive habits. Before long, living with calm and positivity becomes your default way of being, rather than something you have to effort to create. You become someone who naturally approaches life from a centered, grateful, optimistic perspective because you've literally trained your nervous system and brain to operate from this state. Remember, you don't have to be perfect in your habit practice. The goal is consistency, not perfection. If you miss a day or two, simply return to your practice without judgment or self-criticism. The compound effect of positive habits is so powerful that small imperfections in execution don't derail the overall benefits. Chapter 13. The Art of Letting Go. One of the greatest sources of inner turmoil is our tendency to hold on to things that are meant to flow through our lives rather than stick to them. We grip tightly to past hurts, future worries, other people's opinions, outcomes we can't control, and versions of ourselves that no longer serve us. This mental and emotional clinging creates suffering and prevents us from experiencing the natural peace that emerges when we learn to let go. Letting go isn't about giving up or becoming passive. It's about releasing your attachment to specific outcomes while remaining fully engaged in the process of living. It's the difference between rowing your boat down the river while fighting the current versus rowing your boat down the river while working with the current. Most people resist the idea of letting go because they confuse it with not caring or surrendering their power. But the opposite is true. When you let go of what you can't control, you free up enormous amounts of energy to focus on what you can influence. When you release attachment to specific outcomes, you become more effective at creating positive outcomes because you're not paralyzed by the fear of failure. Let me share a story that illustrates the power of letting go. Several years ago, I was working on a project that was extremely important to me. I had invested months of time, significant financial resources, and a great deal of emotional energy into making it successful. As the deadline approached, it became clear that despite my best efforts, the project wasn't going to work out as I had envisioned. My first reaction was to fight harder. I worked longer hours, spent more money, and became increasingly stressed and anxious as I tried to force the outcome I wanted. The harder I fought, the worse things seemed to get. I was so attached to my original vision that I couldn't see alternative possibilities that might actually be better. Finally, in a moment of exhaustion and clarity, I made a decision that felt terrifying but also liberating. I let go. I released my attachment to the specific outcome I had been fighting for and opened myself to whatever was meant to unfold. This didn't mean I stopped working on the project, but I stopped trying to control every detail of how it would turn out. Within days of making this mental shift, new opportunities began to appear that I hadn't noticed before because I had been so focused on forcing my original plan. The project evolved in a direction I never could have imagined, and the final result was actually better than what I had originally envisioned. That experience taught me that letting go isn't about giving up on your dreams. It's about holding your dreams lightly enough that you can recognize when life is offering you something even better than what you originally planned. One of the most challenging things to let go of is the past. Many people carry old hurts, regrets, and resentments like heavy bags. They refuse to set down. They replay conversations they wish had gone differently, obsess over opportunities they missed, and punish themselves for mistakes they made years or even decades ago. But here's the truth about the past. It exists only in your memory. Every moment you spend reliving past events is a moment you're not present for the opportunities and experiences available right now. Every ounce of energy you pour into wishing the past were different is energy that could be used to create a better present and future. Letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting important lessons or pretending that difficult things didn't happen. It means extracting whatever wisdom and growth the experiences offered, and then releasing the emotional charge that keeps you trapped in old stories. A powerful practice for releasing the past is what I call the gratitude completion ceremony. Think of a past experience that you've been carrying as a burden, a relationship that ended badly, a mistake that still haunts you, or an opportunity you feel you missed. Write a letter to this experience, acknowledging the pain it caused, but also recognizing any gifts it brought you. Maybe a difficult relationship taught you valuable lessons about boundaries. Maybe a professional failure redirected you towards something better suited to your talents. Maybe a health challenge helped you appreciate your body and prioritize self-care. End the letter by thanking the experience for whatever it taught you, and then ceremonially release it. You might burn the letter, bury it in your garden, or simply tear it up and throw it away. The physical act of release helps your subconscious mind understand that you're truly letting go. Just as challenging as releasing the past is letting go of anxiety about the future. Your mind is constantly generating scenarios about what might happen, most of which never actually occur. This mental time travel into imaginary futures robs you of peace and presence while providing no real benefit. Letting go of future anxiety doesn't mean failing to plan or prepare responsibly. It means distinguishing between productive planning and unproductive worry. Productive planning involves taking concrete actions to influence outcomes you care about. Unproductive worry involves mentally rehearsing scenarios you can't control or spending emotional energy on events that may never happen. When you notice your mind spinning stories about future disasters, gently bring your attention back to the present moment by asking yourself, what action can I take right now to influence this situation positively? If there's an action you can take, take it. If there isn't, consciously release the worry and redirect your attention to what's actually happening in your life right now. Another area where letting go is crucial is in your relationships with other people. Many people exhaust themselves trying to control how others think, feel, and behave. They take responsibility for other people's emotions, try to manage other people's choices, and feel personally responsible when others make decisions they disagree with. But here's a fundamental truth about relationships. You can only control your own thoughts, feelings, and actions. Every moment you spend trying to change someone else is a moment you're not spending on becoming the best version of yourself. Every ounce of energy you pour into managing other people's choices is energy that could be used to make better choices yourself. Letting go in relationships means loving people without trying to control them. It means expressing your needs and boundaries clearly while accepting that others have the right to respond however they choose. It means offering support and guidance when asked, while recognizing that other people's problems are not yours to solve. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or uncaring. It means caring deeply while holding lightly. It means being willing to influence through your example, rather than demanding change through your words or emotional pressure. Perhaps the most profound letting go involves releasing outdated versions of yourself. As you grow and evolve, old aspects of your identity become like clothes that no longer fit. The person you were 5 years ago, with their fears, limitations, and coping strategies, may no longer serve who you're becoming. Many people resist this kind of personal evolution because their identity feels like the one stable thing in a constantly changing world. But clinging to outdated self-concepts actually prevents the growth and healing that would bring greater happiness and fulfillment. Letting go of old versions of yourself means being willing to say, "That's not who I am anymore." Maybe you used to be someone who never spoke up in groups, but you've developed confidence and want to contribute more. Maybe you used to be someone who avoided challenges, but you've discovered you're actually quite resilient. Maybe you used to define yourself by your wounds and struggles, but you're ready to be known for your strengths and contributions. This process can feel disorienting because it requires releasing familiar patterns and stepping into unknown territory. But it's also incredibly liberating because it frees you from the prison of limiting self-concepts and allows you to become who you're truly meant to be. The practice of letting go is ongoing, not a one-time event. Life is constantly offering you opportunities to release what no longer serves you and embrace what wants to emerge. Each time you choose to let go, you create space for something new and potentially wonderful to enter your life. Chapter 14. The Science of Positive Relationships. Human beings are wired for connection. Your relationships have more impact on your mental health, emotional well-being, and life satisfaction than almost any other factor. Yet most people stumble through their relationships unconsciously, reacting to others rather than consciously creating the kinds of connections that nourish and support everyone involved. The quality of your relationships directly affects your ability to stay calm and positive. When your relationships are filled with conflict, drama, and negativity, it's nearly impossible to maintain inner peace. But when your relationships are characterized by mutual respect, genuine care, and positive energy, they become a source of strength that helps you navigate life's challenges with greater resilience. The foundation of positive relationships is taking full responsibility for your own contribution to every interaction while releasing responsibility for how others choose to respond. This might sound simple, but it's actually a profound shift that transforms how you experience every relationship in your life. Most people enter relationships with an unconscious scorecard, constantly monitoring whether they're getting as much as they're giving, whether others are treating them fairly, and whether their needs are being met to their satisfaction. This scorecard mentality creates resentment, disappointment, and conflict because it positions relationships as transactions rather than connections. When you take full responsibility for your contribution regardless of how others respond, you become a source of positive energy rather than someone who needs positive energy from others to feel good. This shift is incredibly liberating because it means your emotional well-being isn't dependent on other people's choices, moods, or behaviors. Let me share how this principle transformed one of my most challenging relationships. I had a family member who was chronically negative, critical, and difficult to be around. For years, I tried to change their behavior through arguments, logic, emotional appeals, and eventually avoidance. Nothing worked, and our interactions were consistently stressful and draining. Finally, I decided to experiment with taking complete responsibility for my own contribution to our relationship while releasing any expectation that they would change. Instead of trying to defend myself against their criticism, I would listen with genuine curiosity. Instead of responding to their negativity with my own negativity, I would try to find something positive to focus on. Instead of avoiding them, I would engage with kindness while maintaining clear boundaries about what I would and wouldn't accept. The transformation was remarkable. While their fundamental personality didn't change dramatically, our interactions became much more peaceful and occasionally even enjoyable. More importantly, I stopped feeling drained and stressed after spending time with them because I was no longer fighting a battle I couldn't win. This experience taught me that you can't control how others treat you, but you have complete control over how you respond to how others treat you. And often, when you change your response, it naturally influences others to respond differently as well. One of the most powerful relationship skills you can develop is empathetic listening. The ability to truly understand another person's perspective without immediately trying to fix, argue with, or judge what they're sharing. Most people listen primarily to formulate their response rather than to understand the other person's experience. Empathetic listening involves setting aside your own agenda and giving your full attention to understanding how the other person sees and feels about their situation. It means listening for the emotions behind the words, not just the literal content of what someone is saying. When someone shares a problem with you, your first instinct might be to offer solutions, share a similar experience from your own life, or explain why they shouldn't feel the way they're feeling. But often, what people need most is simply to feel heard and understood. A simple but powerful phrase that demonstrates empathetic listening is, "That sounds really difficult. Tell me more about how you're feeling about this." This response shows that you're focused on understanding their experience rather than rushing to fix or change it. I learned the power of empathetic listening through my relationship with my teenage daughter during a particularly challenging period. She was struggling with social issues at school and would come home upset and frustrated. My instinct was to immediately offer advice about how to handle the situations she was describing. But I noticed that my well-intentioned advice often seemed to make her more upset rather than helping. She would become defensive or withdraw completely, and our conversations would end in conflict rather than connection. One day, instead of offering advice, I simply said, "That sounds really hard. I can see why you'd feel frustrated about that." To my surprise, she continued talking and eventually worked through her feelings and came to her own conclusions about how to handle the situation. She didn't need me to solve her problem. She needed me to witness and validate her experience while she figured things out herself. Another crucial element of positive relationships is the practice of generous interpretation, choosing to attribute positive motives to others' actions whenever reasonably possible. Most relationship conflicts arise from negative assumptions about why someone did or said something. When someone is late to meet you, you can assume they don't respect your time, or you can assume they encountered unexpected delays. When someone gives you feedback that feels critical, you can assume they're trying to hurt you, or you can assume they're trying to help you improve. When someone doesn't respond to your text immediately, you can assume they're ignoring you, or you can assume they're busy with other responsibilities. The interpretation you choose has a huge impact on how you feel and how you respond. Negative interpretations create resentment and defensiveness. Generous interpretations create understanding and connection. This doesn't mean being naive or ignoring genuine red flags in relationships. It means giving people the benefit of the doubt when their actions are ambiguous and choosing to focus on their positive intentions rather than their imperfect execution. Building positive relationships also requires the courage to be vulnerable, to share your authentic thoughts, feelings, and experiences, rather than hiding behind a perfect facade. Vulnerability is what transforms superficial connections into meaningful relationships. Many people resist vulnerability because they're afraid of being judged, rejected, or hurt. But the irony is that when you try to protect yourself by hiding your authentic self, you prevent the very connections that would actually make you feel safe and accepted. Vulnerability doesn't mean sharing your deepest secrets with everyone you meet. It means being genuine about your experience rather than pretending to be someone you're not. It might mean admitting when you don't know something instead of pretending to have all the answers. It might mean sharing that you're struggling with something instead of acting like everything is perfect. It might mean expressing appreciation for someone instead of assuming they already know how you feel. The beautiful thing about vulnerability is that it gives others permission to be vulnerable as well. When you're genuine about your imperfections, struggles, and authentic emotions, it creates space for others to do the same. This mutual authenticity is what creates the deep connections that nourish the soul. Positive relationships also require healthy boundaries, clear guidelines about what you will and won't accept in your interactions with others. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that allow relationships to flourish within a framework of mutual respect. Many people struggle with boundaries because they confuse being kind with being limitless. They think that good relationships require them to say yes to everything, tolerate any behavior, and prioritize others' needs above their own. But relationships without boundaries often become resentful, imbalanced, and ultimately harmful to everyone involved. Healthy boundaries might mean saying no to requests that would overextend you, expressing disagreement when someone says something you fundamentally disagree with, or limiting contact with people who consistently drain your energy or treat you poorly. The key to maintaining healthy boundaries is to set them from a place of self-respect rather than anger or resentment. When you communicate your limits clearly and kindly, most people will respect them. Those who don't respect your boundaries reveal that they're more interested in what you can do for them than in having a genuine relationship with you. Chapter 15. Creating a Life of Purpose and Meaning. The final piece of staying calm and positive in life is connecting with something larger than your immediate concerns and daily challenges. When your life has meaning and purpose, you develop a resilience and inner strength that can weather any storm. Without this deeper sense of significance, even small problems can feel overwhelming because they're not balanced by a larger context of meaning. Purpose isn't something you find lying around waiting to be discovered. It's something you create through conscious choice and consistent action. It emerges from the intersection of your values, your talents, and the needs you see in the world around you. It's about using your unique gifts to contribute something valuable to the lives of others. Many people spend their entire lives waiting for their purpose to be revealed to them in some dramatic moment of clarity. They expect to have a burning bush experience where their calling becomes crystal clear and their path forward is obvious. But for most people, purpose develops gradually through paying attention to what energizes you, what problems you care about solving, and what activities make you feel most alive and engaged. Purpose doesn't have to be grandiose or world-changing. It doesn't require you to quit your job, start a non-profit, or dedicate your life to ending world hunger. Your purpose might be raising children who feel loved and confident. It might be creating art that brings beauty into the world. It might be providing excellent customer service that brightens people's days. It might be being the kind of friend who others can count on during difficult times. The key is that your purpose connects you to something beyond your own immediate comfort and pleasure. It gives you a reason to get up in the morning that's bigger than just getting through another day. It provides a framework for making decisions and a source of motivation during challenging times. Let me share how I discovered my own sense of purpose. For years, I felt successful on the outside but empty on the inside. I had a good career, financial security, and a comfortable lifestyle, but something was missing. I felt like I was going through the motions of life without any deeper sense of why it mattered. The turning point came when I started volunteering as a mentor for young people who were aging out of the foster care system. These young adults were facing incredible challenges with very little support, and I found myself deeply moved by their resilience and determination to create better lives for themselves. As I spent time with these young people, I realized that my favorite part of my work and my life was helping others see possibilities they hadn't recognized and develop skills they didn't know they possessed. I started to understand that my purpose was about empowering people to become the best versions of themselves. This realization didn't require me to completely change my career, but it did shift how I approached everything I did. I began looking for ways to incorporate mentoring and empowerment into my professional work. I started paying more attention to opportunities to encourage and support the people around me. I made choices about how to spend my time and energy based on whether they aligned with my deeper sense of purpose. Having this sense of purpose transformed how I experienced daily life. Challenges that used to feel overwhelming began to feel like opportunities to develop strength and wisdom that I could share with others. Setbacks became learning experiences that would help me better understand and support people facing similar difficulties. Purpose provides what psychologists call post-traumatic growth, the ability to become stronger and wiser through difficult experiences rather than just surviving them. When you know your struggles are contributing to something meaningful, it doesn't eliminate the pain, but it gives the pain significance and value. Creating a life of purpose also requires cultivating what I call contribution consciousness. The awareness that your actions, words, and energy are constantly impacting the world around you, and the intentional choice to make that impact as positive as possible. Most people underestimate their influence on others. You might think that your mood, attitude, and behavior only affect you, but the truth is that you're constantly influencing everyone you interact with, often in ways you'll never know about. The smile you give to a stranger might be exactly what they needed to get through a difficult day. The patience you show to a frustrated customer service representative might restore their faith in humanity. The encouragement you offer to a colleague who's struggling might give them the confidence to persevere and ultimately succeed. When you become conscious of your constant influence on others, it transforms how you move through the world. You begin to see every interaction as an opportunity to contribute something positive to someone's life. You realize that your own emotional state isn't just about you, it's about everyone whose life you touch. This awareness creates what I call purposeful presence, the practice of bringing your best self to every situation, not just the ones that feel important or significant. It means treating the grocery store cashier with the same kindness you would show to your best friend. It means bringing patience and understanding to difficult conversations. It means choosing to be a source of light in a world that often feels dark. Purposeful presence doesn't require you to be perfect or always positive. It simply requires you to be conscious about the energy you're bringing to each moment and making intentional choices about how you want to impact the people around you. Another essential element of creating meaning is developing what I call legacy thinking, considering how you want to be remembered and what kind of impact you want your life to have. This isn't about ego or fame. It's about understanding that your life matters and that the choices you make today are creating the story that will be told about you when you're gone. Legacy thinking helps you make decisions from a place of long-term wisdom rather than short-term impulse. When you're facing a difficult choice, asking yourself, what would the person I want to become do in this situation, often provides clarity that other decision-making frameworks don't offer. Your legacy isn't just what you accomplish professionally or the achievements you accumulate. It's also about the kind of person you were in your relationships, how you treated people who couldn't do anything for you, and the values you lived by when no one was watching. I think about a woman I knew named Eleanor who worked as a school cafeteria worker for 30 years. By many external measures, her job wasn't considered important or prestigious. But Eleanor treated every child who came through her line like they were the most important person in the world. She learned their names, asked about their day, and always had a kind word or encouraging smile. When Eleanor retired, hundreds of former students attended her retirement party. Many of them shared stories about how her kindness had impacted their lives during difficult periods. Some said her daily encouragement had helped them through family problems at home. Others said her belief in them had given them confidence during challenging academic periods. Eleanor's legacy wasn't about career achievement or financial success. It was about the thousands of small moments where she chose to bring love and encouragement into the lives of children who needed it. Her life had profound meaning because she understood that every interaction was an opportunity to make someone's day a little brighter. Creating meaning also involves developing what psychologists call transcendent goals, aspirations that connect you to something larger than your personal success and happiness. These might be environmental goals like protecting natural resources for future generations, social goals like reducing inequality in your community, or spiritual goals like growing in wisdom and compassion. Transcendent goals provide perspective during difficult times because they remind you that your temporary struggles are part of a larger journey of growth and contribution. They also create what researchers call eudaimonic well-being, a deep sense of fulfillment that comes from living according to your highest values rather than just pursuing pleasure and comfort. One powerful practice for connecting with transcendent goals is what I call ripple effect meditation. Spend a few minutes each day imagining the positive impact that your actions and choices are having on the world around you. Think about how your kindness to one person might inspire them to be kinder to others. Consider how your commitment to personal growth might encourage others to work on themselves. Reflect on how your efforts to stay calm and positive might create a more peaceful environment for everyone in your life. This practice helps you see that your individual well-being is connected to the well-being of everyone around you. When you work on staying calm and positive, you're not just helping yourself. You're contributing to a more peaceful and positive world for everyone. Creating meaning also requires accepting that life includes suffering, loss, and challenges that can't be avoided or fixed. Many people lose their sense of purpose when they encounter experiences that don't fit into their vision of how life should work. But meaning often emerges not despite our difficulties, but through them. The challenges you face are opportunities to develop qualities like resilience, compassion, wisdom, and strength that you might never have discovered otherwise. The losses you experience can deepen your appreciation for what remains. The struggles you endure can give you empathy for others facing similar difficulties and wisdom to offer them. This doesn't mean you should seek out suffering or be grateful for trauma. It means that when difficult experiences are inevitable, you can choose to extract meaning and growth from them rather than allowing them to make you bitter or hopeless. Finally, creating a life of meaning requires what I call present moment purpose. The understanding that meaning isn't just about your long-term goals and ultimate legacy, but about how you choose to show up in each ordinary moment of your daily life. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice deep listening. Every challenging situation is a chance to respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. Every interaction with another person is an opportunity to contribute something positive to their experience. Every moment of difficulty is a chance to practice the qualities you want to develop. When you approach life this way, you don't have to wait until you achieve some future goal to feel that your life has meaning. Your life has meaning right now, in this moment, through your choice to live consciously and contribute positively to the world around you. The beautiful thing about living with purpose and meaning is that it creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The more meaning you create in your life, the more resilient you become in the face of challenges. The more resilient you become, the more you're able to contribute to others. The more you contribute to others, the more meaning you experience in your own life. This is how you build a life that's not just calm and positive, but deeply fulfilling and significant. This is how you create a legacy that extends far beyond your own individual happiness, to touch the lives of countless others in ways both seen and unseen. As we reach the end of this journey together, remember that everything we've discussed isn't just information to consume, it's a set of practices to implement. The techniques for staying calm and positive work, but only if you work them. The insights about resilience, relationships, and meaning are valuable, but only if you apply them to your daily life. Start small. Choose one or two practices that resonated most strongly with you and commit to implementing them consistently for the next 30 days. Whether it's daily reflection, emotional resetting, boundary setting, or any of the other tools we've explored, give yourself the gift of sustained practice. Your calm and positivity aren't dependent on your circumstances being perfect. They're skills you can develop, qualities you can cultivate, and choices you can make regardless of what's happening around you. You have everything you need within you right now to create the inner peace and positive outlook you desire. The world needs people who have learned to stay calm in chaos and positive in the face of challenge. By doing this work for yourself, you're not just improving your own life, you're becoming a source of stability and hope for everyone whose life you touch. Your journey toward lasting calm and positivity starts now. Take the first step, then the next one, then the next. Before you know it, you'll look back and realize you've become the peaceful, positive person you always knew you could be.